I feel bad for that Barack Obama, you know, the president. He, they got the Benghazi scandal. They got that. He's got to handle the IRS scandal. The IRS investigating people, and is something new about that? I thought that's for the IRS. And the FBI wiretapping phones. I mean, honest to God, my phone's been tapped for the last 20 years. Who here's had a tapped phone in their house? Yeah. So now the president, and he's in so much trouble politically, the president, he's thinking about killing bin Laden again. He feels like that's the only thing he can possibly do.
All right, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. That little ditty from the David Letterman Show comes to us from our friend Noel Sheppard at newsbusters.org, Associate Editor Noel Sheppard. It must be Malzberg's Media Madness, and Noel with that story the other day. Hey, Noel, how are you?
Good. How are you? Happy Friday and happy Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, same to you. And for the third straight Friday, we're featuring, or for the third straight show, you and I, we're featuring David Letterman. No, for the second of those 3 weeks, second straight of those three, no lesbians involved.
No lesbians involved, and bashing Barack Obama.
Yeah.
So, you know, look, when he loses, and I mean Obama, when he loses David Letterman, that's certainly not like that's certainly not the end of the world, but it's telling, and what we've seen all week, and we talked about this last Friday, was it's going to be interesting to see how the IRS scandal continues to play out and these various scandals play out, and what we're seeing is this drip, drip, drip of more information coming out about all of them, and that's bad for Obama. And it makes for great late night fodder for folks, including now David Letterman, who seems more and more comfortable to poke fun at Obama, and he did again last night. So,
yep.
Interesting stuff, really fascinating.
Well, I want to let the folks hear a couple of Leno sound bites. Also, this is from a story that you put forth just the other day at Newsbusters, and this is pretty funny. And again, I want to ask you about Leno as compared to Letterman. When we hear this, after we hear it, here's cut 25.
I'm sure you know by now Anthony Weiner, the Peter Tweety, you know that whole story. Well, he announced he is running for mayor of New York City, but he's having some problems. A lot of Democrats are distancing themselves from him. They say he doesn't represent the party. Well, they talk, it doesn't represent the party. Every day, the White House gets caught with their pants down. He couldn't be more representative of the party. Yeah, it is not looking good for President Obama. Today, his teleprompter took the fifth. That's a bad sign when that happens. In fact, they've changed their slogan from yes, we can to no, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Now, I got one more, and then I want to ask you about Leno. Here's the second Leno cut, 26.
See, that was back in 1979. Let me tell you how long ago that was. Back then, Obama had to ask a girl for her phone number. He couldn't illegally obtain it through the Justice Department. You had to ask the girl for the...
All right, now that was a picture that they showed of Obama in high school when he was 17 or whatever with a girl, right. And so that's what he was referencing. I've noticed that even before the scandals, I think that, and I don't watch it all, but I see you guys you have Leno all the time in your columns, right. And you present the video that right. He, ever since his troubles with NBC, he's become bolder and bolder in his attacking the administration. Is that correct?
I think that's true, although, you know, he was ahead of most comedians going after Obama. He was even going after Obama last year during the campaign and prior to Election Day. But I would say it does seem that things have really picked up since he started having his problems with NBC, and since it's become clear that he is going to be leaving next February. You know, you have to, I mean, you bring up a good point. You have to wonder, if he was sticking around, if he hadn't have had his issues and if Fallon wasn't replacing him, and I believe it's next February, you have to wonder whether he'd be going after Obama this aggressively, and whether he'd be getting pushback from not necessarily producers, but higher-ups within NBC, who clearly are much more on board Obama's bandwagon than he is. And he has really since these scandals hit, he has really ratcheted up the attacks. Every monologue for the past several weeks has had a series, I mean, not just one joke, a series, one after the other, of going after these scandals. And it's really very refreshing to see. I mean, you know, Leno is showing himself to be by far the best of the late night hosts. And I think NBC is going to regret this decision terribly. I watched Jimmy Fallon, and I know I'm just on the edge of the demographic. You know, the demographic goes to 54, I think, and I'm 53. So I'm just on that edge. So from my perspective, I really don't find him to be a tremendously engaging interviewer. I mean, I think his shtick is good.
Yeah, he's a little goofy for me.
He's a little goofy. He's
Yeah.
kind of childish.
Yeah.
And I'm not, you know, look, I mean, he's not doing really well in the demo, and neither is Kimmel. What's amazing here is NBC is making this decision that they've got to go after somebody younger and get rid of Jay, who's absolutely killing it.
It is.
And yet Jay is doing better in the demo than Fallon and Kimmel.
It is.
So you know, it's a strange decision here.
It's a crazy preemption of. It's kind of like a baseball team, you know, looking out for their future, but in the process. And I guess it's different in TV because you're not going to get Fallon and be able to put him in the minor leagues, quote unquote, or you know that's where he is now, and they want to be able to keep him from jumping to another team as a free agent in the analogy. But it's kind of like, you know, getting a young and up and coming superstar pitcher who really hasn't done it yet, but they say he's going to because look at how well he's done in the minors. And to do that, to get that guy, you're taking away your Cy Young Award-winning 20-game winner to put him in.
Exactly, who's in the prime of his career, right? I mean, he just won a Cy Young last year. He won 25 games. He had a 2.0 ERA. He won the World Series for you, but we're going to replace him with a new up-and-comer who hasn't done anything.
Right.
And the other thing that I think is interesting, and I think you'll agree, it seemed to me that that Johnny Carson got better with age. You know, I mean, to me, he was at some of his finest in his last 5 years or so.
Yep.
And Leno, to me, has got – I mean, I think Leno is far funnier today than he was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I never
think
liked
he's
him.
much better.
Yeah, to me, he was goofy back then, too.
Right.
Now he's matured and he's an adult kind of, and
I
think
he's a fine wine now.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, ready to be opened, not ready to be thrown out.
No, well, listen. You know what? There's a little network out there called Fox that somehow, you mark my words, they're not gonna. They know value. They're not going to let him just wander into the wilderness.
Seems like a slam dunk, Stephen. What we hope Leno did here, as the tensions grew. And obviously, he was meeting with NBC execs who wanted a smoother transition for Fallon. We hope that what he did is he said, I tell you what, I'll play ball. I'll introduce him. I'll even do a song with him. I'll do whatever you want. But after February of 2014, my contract is null and void. That little clause in there that said that I've got to wait a year before I compete, we're going to pull that out.
Right. And courts frown upon that these days anyway. But yeah, very interesting. See, we sidetracked into the Leno versus Letterman and the future of Leno. Yeah, all right, and Leno versus Fallon. We're talking to Noel Sheppard, associate editor of Newsbusters.org. Now let's get back to the politics here, guys. This is Chuck Todd, NBC News White House correspondent, and of course, flaming liberal talk show host on MSNBC at the same time. Let's go to cut 29.
You know, what's funny is I think candidate Obama, if George Bush and Dick Cheney were doing this, imagine what candidate Obama would have said. Candidate Obama would be unloading. There'd be a lot of Democrats that would be unloading on the administration if they were and they were trying to crack down on leaks. You can't look at this and see it as anything other than an attempt to basically scare anybody from ever leaking anything ever again. So they want to criminalize journalism.
For Chuck Todd to say criminalize journalism about the Department of Justice going after the records of AP and of Fox News and that scandal, that is huge.
It really is. And by the way, he said this on MSNBC's Morning Joe.
Right.
So he wasn't on NBC. This wasn't the Today Show. This was on MSNBC. And granted, it's Scarborough's program, which even though it leans to the left, is certainly more right-leaning than anything else on MSNBC. But this was a fall out of the bed kind of a moment for me when I saw this. I was quite shocked by it. But look, I think, and we talked about it last week, the administration has gone too far. I don't think that there's any question. I mean, Andrea Mitchell has come out against this. Journalists, what's left of journalists these days, and I'm not sure any of them are journalists. I think that what's occurred here is the Obama administration has gone so far that people who ceased being journalists suddenly remember journalism school and what they learned and what they have forgotten in the past 20 or 30 years as they've become shills for the Democrat Party. I think that the love that they had for journalism and real journalism has suddenly blossomed, has suddenly been touched by the Obama administration trying to criminalize it. And I think these folks are you know, one of the things I said last week is it's 2013, so they can say this. I don't think they'd be saying this in 2014. Well, I'm beginning to wonder now whether all of these scandals combined, if the media really have turned, and it's early yet, it's only May, we're not in an election year yet, but you have to wonder, have the media turned here? Could this move next year into a Democrat culture of corruption? I mean, remember all of that talk in the 2006 midterms about the Republican culture of corruption?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Is it possible that 8 years later the media are going to be talking about a Democrat culture of corruption?
Well,
Let's see.
That would be wonderful. Here's Lisa Myers talking on Morning Joe as well on MSNBC, cut 27.
I still think the IRS is the bigger scandal because, I mean, the IRS goes to the heart of our government. Yeah. And we not only don't know how this started, we know that mid-level managers knew about it for a long time, and we know that for a year, the IRS essentially knowingly lied to Congress, and no one came forward. There was no whistleblower. Unlike the State Department on Benghazi, excuse me, when 3 people risked their careers because they thought the truth was not coming out. Here, in the IRS, there's nothing but silence.
Yeah. Lisa Myers.
Amazing.
Yep.
No, I mean, absolutely shocking. And, I mean, this is a senior investigative reporter for NBC News, very, very well respected, certainly left of center, but has done some very fine work in her career. And for her to come out and say that the IRS was essentially knowingly lying to Congress for more than a year, it's an amazing statement. And it just shows you that I think that, again, this was one straw too many. I think the camel's back has been broken. The camel's back of the media, of the Obama-loving media, has been broken. And the question is, how long is it going to break, or are they going to get in a chiropractor and fix it in time for and align it in time for the 2014 elections?
Right. No, well, now of course we have the Holder investigating himself. Basically, on the subpoena, we have the promotion, although it hasn't happened yet, the rumored nomination to promote the spokesperson for the State Department who fixed the talking points, Newland, to promote it to Assistant Secretary of State. Again, to me, that's President in-your-face Obama. But one more, and this is so telling, so revealing. This is Chris Matthews talking about a guest that Morning Joe had on his show, and Matthews didn't like it, and reveals himself and his philosophy for who should be on shows. Here's cut 1.
Screw-ups are not need for penitential action, simply correction. But when Reince Priebus has the nerve to cross the line into giving us moral leadership, we all must laugh heartily. The administration's bungling of the IRS issue has opened, of course, the door for GOP featherweights like RNC Chair Reince Priebus to launch some serious accusations. They're not serious coming from him. They sound serious. Priebus tweeted, which is a perfect means of communication for him yesterday, "Great show with Sean Hannity tonight. It's lawlessness and guerrilla warfare, and Obama's in the middle of it." This is what a leader of a political party talks like, a 13-year-old. This morning, he doubled down on those accusations. Here he was on Morning Joe. I don't know why they put him on. I guess they're open to all people's points of view on that show.
But not on mine.
But not on mine. but not on mine.
Oh my!
No, I mean this is Chris Matthews totally letting the cat out of the bag, as if the cat's been in the bag.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean it's an extraordinary thing for him to say that basically, wow, you mean Joe Scarborough allows people with different points of view on his show? What kind of journalist is Joe? And I don't know whether you and I have spoken about this. I think that we have. What's really sad here is when Chris Matthews' Hardball was first on CNBC, by the way, created by Roger Ailes, I believe. This was a totally fair and balanced, straight down the middle program, two conservatives, two liberals, with him moderating and not taking sides and doing a fabulous job. It used to be a must-see program.
Right.
It was one of the best daily political talk shows on television. Now he's just a shill, and you have to wonder why he sold himself so far down the river when he was very, very well respected by both sides.
He filled in for Rush Limbaugh right after the Columbine shooting. Back then in '99, I guess it was. So, yeah, that's how respected he was. One other thing here, speaking of MSNBC, their ratings during the midst of all these scandals, when people are tuning in to find out what's going on, and, of course, the radical left, loves the MSNBC characters, but they're at their lowest ratings, as you point out in your piece at newsbusters.org, in 7 years.
7 years. I mean, it's, since 2006,
wow.
Since June of 2006. And as you said, we have been in a news-rich environment here with obviously the Boston Marathon bombing, the plant the fertilizer plant in Texas, and all of these scandals, and people are turning off MSNBC, and I really do believe it conceivably started with a Pew poll, with a Pew Research Center study finding that 85% of the reports on MSNBC are opinion and not commentary and not news. And I think it's becoming very clear this is just not a news network, and in a high news environment, people are saying, I don't want it, I don't want them. And in prime time, they're hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
I mean, this movement of Chris Hayes has
huge
been
mistake.
a disaster. Martin Bashir at 4 o'clock is consistently one of the lowest rated programs on TV.
And
I mean, it's at this
Noel,
point,
people
their
got
lineup
paid.
is a disaster.
People get paid to make these decisions, and they're still in place. Noel, wonderful hit, as always, and have a very meaningful and great Memorial Day weekend. We'll speak to you next week.
You too, sir.